Winning Blueprint presents.
Draft Zone.
Welcome to the NFL Draft Zone. I'm your host, Lou. Thank you for joining me. This is the 2013 NFL Draft Wrap-Up. And what we aim to do with this program is take a look at every single team's 2013 NFL Draft, break it down, looking at each and every single pick made by each and every single team in the National Football League. Now, today we'll be talking about the Jacksonville Jaguars and what they were able to accomplish in the 2013 draft. We'll look at every single one of their 8 selections, break them down, give them a score using our baseball grading scale, as we always do here in the lab room and in the draft zone. Single, double, triple, home runs are what the scores will consist of. There will be no strikeouts in the draft wrap-up, as we cannot tell which one of these players, if any of them, will be bust. And we can't tell if the Jacksonville Jaguars did in fact reach for a player or not, as every single team in the league has different grades on each and every single player in this draft. The Jaguars might have a second-round grade on a player, while the Tennessee Titans might have a fourth-round grade on that very same player. So we can't say that any team in this draft reached for any single player. If it's your guy, you take your guy when you feel necessary to take him. So, again, there will be no strikeouts here in the draft wrap-up series. So, with that being said, we'll look at each and every single selection, give them a grade, average those grades up, get an aggregate score for the Jacksonville Jaguars, and then we'll move on from there. So, with that being said, all that taken care of, I got my draft board behind me, and you know what else I have? Got the handy-dandy pointer. Let's get to the draft board and see what the Jacksonville Jaguars were able to accomplish in the 2013 NFL Draft. So, as we look at the board, we take a quick peek at the needs list for the Jacksonville Jaguars. We know quarterback is right up there among the top list of needs for the Jaguars. Now, I can't fault the Jaguars for not taking a quarterback in this draft, and we'll talk about the draft as a whole here in a second, but I can't fault them for not taking a quarterback in this draft. This is one of those drafts that if you decide to pass on quarterback, you won't get any flack from a lot of people around the league, including myself. This was not a top-heavy, talented draft at the quarterback position. If there was ever a draft that you wanted to pass on quarterback, this would be the one. So I think the Jaguars realized that, hey, it's better for us to stock up on all the things that we can get to surround the team with all the talent in the world. So when that quarterback that we have our eye on comes around, we'll be set in every position necessary to take that next step right away. So even though quarterback is a need, don't look for the Jaguars to address it via this draft. Offensive line, however, is something they definitely needed to address. You want your tackles to be bookends on your offensive line. So when that quarterback that you feel is the guy, and who knows, maybe that guy is already on the roster and he just hasn't shown it yet. I'm being very, very kind when I say that. Very optimistic, but who knows? But you got to protect first and foremost. Doesn't matter who the quarterback is. So cornerback, you lost 2 cornerbacks, 2 veteran quarterbacks on your roster last year in the form of Derek Cox and Rasheem Mathis, longtime Jacksonville Jaguar Rasheem Mathis. And so cornerback definitely a need you need to address. Safety, your starting safety last year was Dewan Landry. He's gone, and so, again, need to address that in free agency. And as well, defensive line. Always can use more defensive linemen. The Jacksonville Jaguars were one of the worst teams in the league at getting to the quarterback. Their leading sack getter last year, Tyson Alualu, with about 3 sacks. That can't happen. Your defensive tackle can't be your leading sack getter on your football team. That's a disgrace. Got to address that via the draft. Get guys that can get to the quarterback. So let's get to this board and round, pick, players, position, school. Let's get to the Jacksonville Jaguars draft. And so we start here in the first round. Second pick overall in the draft, offensive tackle out of Texas A&M, Luke Joeckel. And this one was easy for the Jaguars. They made a list of 2 players. One of those 2 players was going to be there at number 2. I thought that all along, Gus Bradley, your new head coach, and a defensive-minded coach from the Seattle Seahawks, was looking for his Leo. He was looking for that roaming, pass-rushing, linebacker/defensive end to get to the quarterback in his defense. They call it the Leo in his defense. I thought he was looking for that guy. And I thought it was going to be a no-brainer at 2. I really did for the longest time. And I'm talking about for about a month and a half or so. I was sold that Deion Jordan was going to be the pick here at number 2. And there was no telling me otherwise. But as the draft neared closer, and I'm talking about 2 days before the draft, I realized they're going to take a tackle. Because I already knew Eugene Monroe was on the left side, and I felt like Eugene Monroe was one of your better picks in the last 5 years. I mean, of all the picks that you've missed on, you've swung and missed, you've hit solid singles and doubles, Eugene Monroe has been a really good selection for you in the draft, at the top half of the draft, considering that he was a top 10 pick. He really was a good selection for the Jaguars, and he's been a really good left tackle for you. So I didn't see tackle as being something that you had to go and get. Now, it'd be nice to have both left and right tackle taken care of, but I just thought that Deion Jordan sitting there a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to get a guy that can change the game from the defensive end position, a position that you lacked any flair, any luster at. And so I just thought that that was going to be the pick, but I was wrong. And I realized about 2 days before the draft, they're going to take a tackle. And I figured, okay, whatever one's left, whichever one the Chiefs don't select, that's the one the Jacksonville Jaguars will select. And it was only going to be between 2 tackles. It was either going to be Joeckel or Fisher. And whichever one the Chiefs decided not to take, that's the one the Jacksonville Jaguars were going to take. And so Chiefs took Fisher, Jags take Joeckel. Look, you're getting a technician here at the right tackle position. And really, you drafted him to be a left tackle. He's going to play right tackle right now. But don't be surprised in a year or two, him and Eugene Monroe are making that switch over from left to right. And look, again, you're getting a technician. You're getting a guy that's a machine at the tackle position. He moves well. He's fluid. He knows his responsibility. He's going to take care of business. The only thing I don't particularly care for with Luke Joeckel is that he's a nice guy. He's not a mauler. He's not a masher. He's not an in-your-face tackle. He's not a guy that's just mean for no reason. I like my tackles somewhat edgy, just mean and mad for no reason. They just wake up on the wrong side of the bed every Sunday. Not the case with Luke Joeckel. But that doesn't mean he's going to do his job any less. That just means he's not as aggressive as I would like him to be in certain instances, but doesn't take away from the fact that this guy is an absolute polished product in the form of Luke Joeckel, tackle out of Texas A&M. This is an easy one. It's a home run for the Jacksonville Jaguars. And so if you didn't know, you can put it on the board. Jags in the first round, second overall selection, tackle out of Texas A&M, Luke Joeckel is a home run for the Jacksonville Jaguars in the first round. So we move on to the second round, 33rd selection, safety out of Florida International, Johnathan Cyprien, or as he likes to be called, John Cyprien. So, to me, you got one of the better safeties in this draft. Honestly, I thought there were 4 safeties in this draft that you needed to pick early on up into the second round and up. And it was, of course, Vaccaro, Reed, Cyprien, and Elam. Those were the 4 that I thought were going to go early on, and I thought they were worthy of going relatively early in this draft. And you got one of the better ones. This is a guy that comes up into the box. He's not afraid to hit. In fact, he loves it. He's a really good tackler, and he's a fierce hitter. So he's one of those guys that you come across, and boom! He just lights you up. And in this day and age in the National Football League, guys like him don't get to really play their game. And it really makes me angry because he wants to lay the lumber to somebody. He wants to shellac somebody. And him and DJ Swearinger, to me, are the 2 safeties in this draft that'll come up and just smash it. And I love it. Absolutely love it. Physical. And that's what I want out of my safety. I want my safety to be physical. I want one of my safeties to be mean and physical for no reason. The guy that you don't want to see coming with your ribs exposed over the middle looking to catch a pass. You don't want to see Cyprien. You don't want to see him. But what makes him special, what separates him from some of the other safeties that are second tier and third tier safeties in this draft that weren't in that first 4 category that I just spoke to, is the fact that he can cover too. He's a guy that can make plays on the football. And that's why Johnathan Cyprien is a really good selection for the Jaguars. And I think they got really good value because this was the guy that could have easily went in the first round. It all came down to what was your cup of tea. Was it a guy like Reed that had a little bit more speed? Of course, we know Vaccaro was going to come off the board first at the safety position. Or were you looking for a guy that was going to come up and lay the lumber in run support, but also can drop back into coverage and make plays on the football? And that's what you're getting in Cyprien. And so I think the Jacksonville Jaguars hit it big here. It's a great move to replace a guy like Dewan Landry, which was the enforcer in your secondary. So you get another enforcer. You get a younger, to me, a better enforcer in Cyprien because he's going to make plays on the football. And so with the 33rd selection in the second round, safety out of Florida International, Johnathan Cyprien, for me, is a triple for the Jacksonville Jaguars. It's a really good pick. I really love the value you got here in the second round at 33, at the top half of the second round. It's a great move, and you fill a need as well. Speaking of needs, let's go to the needs board and take care of a couple of issues that you've ironed out. We started with Joeckel at the top of the draft. So he's an offensive tackle, so that's an offensive line need met. You also look at safety. We just met that with Johnathan Cyprien, and so Jaguars knocked down 2 needs immediately to start out this draft. So now we move on to the 3rd round for the Jacksonville Jaguars in this draft and pick number 64, cornerback out of UConn, Dwayne Gratz. Now, some liked Bleedy Ray Wilson better than Dwayne Gratz. Many did, in fact. I was in the minority. I actually like Dwayne Gratz better than Bleedy Ray Wilson. And so I think that the Jaguars really got a good corner that can come in and start right away. Simply put, here's a guy that is long. Even though he's only 5'11", he's a lot longer than a 5'11" corner normally is. And at over 200 pounds, this guy comes up and hits you. And with 22 reps of 2 1/4 at the combine, you know he's physical at the cornerback position. Corners normally aren't repping over 20 reps at the combine at 2 1/4. So this guy right here, physical. Let's get physical, physical. And that's what the Jaguars are doing. The thing, let me tell you this right now before we move on any further in this draft. The reason why I really like this draft for the Jacksonville Jaguars is because they did 2 things. They got physical and they got fast. P and F. And in this league, you got to be P and F. You got to be physical and you got to be fast. And last year, the Jacksonville Jaguars weren't either. You could argue maybe they were a little physical. At times, they were physical. But for 4 quarters, they were never physical. Not for all 4. The Jaguars would put up a heck of a fight for 3 quarters before losing by 12 points, before losing by 17. There were many games the Jacksonville Jaguars were in going into the fourth quarter and found a way to lose and made it not even look close. And that speaks to a lack of physicality, and that speaks to not having the athleticism to keep up with some of these teams that are just flat out better than you. And so I love the physicality right here in your second pick in Cyprien, and now your third round selection in Dwayne Gratz. So again, Jaguars getting physical. So I love this pick because I thought that Gratz was the better of the two corners at UConn. Again, Bleedy Wade Wilson was high on a lot of teams' boards. For me, Gratz was better than he was because he wasn't afraid to make plays on the football. He has really good hands. He's aggressive, is Dwayne Gratz. The only issue with his aggression is that sometimes he can be over-aggressive. And we know what happens to over-aggressive corners. They go sniffing. They get nosy. And that's when they get beat. Man, look, these teams around the league are very smart. They know how to set you up. They'll run that out, they'll run that slant 2 or 3 times early in the game. And guess what you're saying to yourself? Next time he sticks his foot in the ground, I'm going. And guess what? They're going to run the sluggo on you. That slant, and then go. And guess what? You done bit down on that slant, and that's what Dwayne Gratz wants to do. He wants to bite down on that slant. Okay, you got me with it a couple of times. Now I'm jumping it. Bite down on that sluggo. Uh-oh. SpaghettiOs. You've been had up the sideline, 67-yard touchdown pass. So that's the only issue I have with Dwayne Gratz is the fact that he's aggressive, almost to a fault sometimes. But when you're aggressive, guess what? You're going to get beat sometimes, but you're also going to make your fair share of plays. That's why I do like Dwayne Gratz. It's a catch-22. He is aggressive, and sometimes it pays off. Other times he's over-aggressive, and he gets beat. Either way, this guy's physical. He's going to make plays on the football. He isn't afraid. He's a little stiff sometimes. He's a little stiff because he's a big corner. Again, 5'11", but he's a bigger 5'11" than you're used to. And Gus Bradley, as we know, coming from Seattle, loves his big corners. He likes physicality. That's why you can tell he had his input on this draft because it's physical and it's fast. Couple of things that the Jaguars weren't last year. I love this pick. It's another triple for me. In the third round, 64th overall selection, cornerback out of UConn, Dwayne Gratz. So, again, I think the Jaguars did a great job of drafting toward the identity of their head coach here. I like the way this draft is going thus far. We go to the fourth round. Pick 101. Wide receiver out of South Carolina. This pick is from the Philadelphia Eagles. You get Ace Sanders. Ace! Now, again, one of the reasons why I love this draft for the Jacksonville Jaguars, I was really impressed with this draft because they got tremendously faster. Speed! You can't teach it. Either you have it or you don't. And you take Cecil Shorts the third and Maurice Jones-Drew off this team offensively. Where's your speed? Where is it? And Maurice Jones-Drew was not on this team last year. He played about 3 or 4 games, gone for the rest of the season. So all you really had from a speed standpoint was Cecil Shorts the third. And so you needed more speed. And so what did you do? In back-to-back rounds, and we'll talk about your next selection in a little bit, you went out and got guys that can change the game. And Ace Sanders is one of those guys. Now, sure, he's got a few deficiencies, does Ace Sanders. Okay? One, he's 5'7". All right, so we'll never confuse him for a physical specimen. He's a little jitterbug that's going to run around out there and try to make plays for you. But I love Ace Sanders because he's quicker than fast. You look at Ace Sanders and what he was able to do at South Carolina, especially in the returns game, and you say, man, this guy's probably one of the 4.3 40. No, he's a 4.5 40 guy. You wouldn't expect that out of what you've seen on film, but he's quicker than what you see. He's quicker than fast. And so you look at Ace Sanders and what he's able to do. This is my whole stance on Ace Sanders, okay? 4th round selection. This guy didn't run a lot of different routes at South Carolina. They didn't ask a lot of him. They said, look, we're going to give you a couple of routes out of this route tree, and we're going to run them over and over and over again, and we just want you to excel at that. They let them run drags. They let them run bubble screens. They let them run hitches, slants, outs, anything quick to get the ball in his hands and let him work. So if I'm the Jacksonville Jaguars, I'm going to do much of the same. I'm not going to have this guy come in and running 18-yard dig routes over the middle of the field at 5'7". No, he's going to run those same bubble screens, those same drag routes, those same ins and outs, Z outs and anything quick that's going to allow him to get in and out of breaks quickly, get the football in his hands, and watch him work. So I want this guy in space because he can turn into a return man, and that's where he excels. If I'm the Jacksonville Jaguars, for this pick to be validated, this is all I want out of A. Sanders. Give me 23 to 30 catches every year for 312 to 415 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 or 2 touchdowns in the returns game, some explosiveness there, and a couple of explosive runs off of end arounds and reverses and a couple of handoffs. And to me, this pick will be validated. I'm not looking for this guy to come in and be the next best thing since sliced bread at the receiver position. I'm not asking him to do that. I'll tell you what. I'll talk about this a little bit later. Let's just finish up A. Sanders, and I'll tell you what. If he can do that, this guy will be exactly what you were looking for when you drafted him. And so, for me, it's a double for the receiver out of South Carolina, A. Sanders, in the 4th round at pick 101. I think that he has to be utilized a certain way. And to me, if he does nothing else in his rookie season but explode on special teams, I'm fine with it. But that's where his value is, special teams. This guy needs to be a menace, especially on punt returns. That's when he excels. And I'm looking for big things for A. Sanders in the returns game. Because if you're the Jaguars, you need points and field position any way you can get it. And if this guy can get it for you, you'll take it all day long. Like L.A.B, all day long, all day strong. So now we go on to the 5th round. And this is what I was talking about with speed. 135th pick, wide receiver out of Michigan, Denard Robinson. Speed! Now this is true speed right here. This is 4.3 speed right here. This is 4.4 speed right here. This is, you got an angle. I don't care about your angle. I'm beating your angle speed right here. That's that. I'm running without any shoes on speed. That's why they call him shoelaces. He doesn't tie them, so he runs out of his shoes, but you can't catch him. Look, this guy is a football player. He's an athlete. Don't ask me what position he's playing. I have receiver down. I could have had running back down. I could have had return man down. I could have had anything you want. This guy doesn't have a position. What he is, though, is an athlete. And there's always space on the field somewhere for an athlete. Always. Like Coca-Cola. There's always a place on the field for an athlete. And when that athlete has speed, something you can't teach, you got to let this guy get in the game, and you got to put the football in his hands. And so I expect the Jacksonville Jaguars to do exactly that. Look, he's not a polished receiver. He's not a polished running back. He's not any of those things. He's got a lot of work to do. And every single thing that the Jaguars are going to ask him to do, whether it be returning kickoffs, punts, running the football out of the backfield, catching the occasional pass out of the backfield, running routes at the receiver position, whatever the case may be, he's going to be raw at every single one of them. But guess what? He's going to be an athletically gifted raw product at every one of those positions. And if you get the football in his hands and you give him some space to work, Jacksonville, you might have a problem here. You might have a problem on your hands. You can tell the Houston Texans, Houston, you have a problem. And his name might be Denard Robinson. Look, I love speed. And I don't care how you get it on the field. Just get it on the field. And last year, that was one of my issues with the Jaguars. It was like they were running in slow motion. You had Rashad Jennings at running back. You got no receivers out there. Of course, you got Blackman and Cecil Shorts the third. But, man, I was looking for more speed, more something. And I just wasn't getting it. And so now you got it. Ace Sanders, Denard Robinson. Now you got speed. Now let's see what you're going to do with it. And if I'm the Jaguars, the easiest way to help Blaine Gabbert or whoever's going to be playing the quarterback position along is get the ball into some playmakers' hands quickly. Whether it's Cecil Shorts the third, Ace Sanders, Denard Robinson, Justin Blackman, I don't care. Get it in one of their hands and watch them work. Now you got some toys to play with. And I'm not saying that these guys are going to be out there at receiver lighting it up. But you got to find ways, creative ways, to get the football in their hands. To me, it's a triple in the 5th round because I think you got excellent value. I was expecting Denard Robinson to come off the board in the 4th round because I thought someone was going to see the athleticism, the speed, and say, hey, this is a guy that we can't pass on. You got lucky. He was sitting right there in the 5th round. And you couldn't pass up on the athleticism and the upside that this guy possesses because he's raw, extremely raw. He didn't really play these positions in college. He was a quarterback up until his senior year where he realized, okay, look, I got to make way for the next guy that's going to be the future of the quarterback position at Michigan. And I need to go ahead and start showing these NFL teams and scouts what I can do at different positions because I know I'm not playing the quarterback position at the next level. So you got yourself a triple in the form of receiver / running back / return man / athlete out of Michigan in the 5th round at pick 135, Denard Robinson. Okay, so let's go to the needs board and clean up anything that we might have missed over the last couple of rounds. You look at the cornerback position in the 3rd round, Jaguars get Dwayne Gratz, cornerback out of UConn, and that takes care of another need. So we go to the 6th round now, pick 169, safety out of Florida, Josh Evans. Solid pick here. More depth in the secondary at the safety position. You already got Cyprien back there. Now you're adding Josh Evans to the mix. And this is a guy that played at Florida. He bought his time. Wasn't a starter full-time until his senior year. So here's a guy that knows all about waiting patiently to get his opportunity. And I thought he made the best of it once he got that opportunity to start full-time in his senior season at Florida. In 13 games, he really was a productive guy, blitzed a little bit, got to the quarterback, 2.5 sacks. That's pretty good coming from a safety. So he was able to blitz. He was able to get his hands on the football, create a few turnovers. Thought that Josh Evans was really solid. And so you're getting a solid football player in the form of Josh Evans at the safety position. We're talking about a 6'1 safety that's around 205 pounds or so. He could stand to gain a few more pounds, but the issue people have with him potentially putting on more weight is that they don't think he's going to be able to maintain that 4.5 speed that he has if he puts on another 10 or 15 pounds of muscle, which he could use because I think he can be a little bit stronger at the point of attack when he's trying to bring down ball carriers and taking on blocks, looking to shed them and get to ball carriers. I think he could be a little bit more physical, but look, whatever you got to do to be your most efficient, if your most efficient playing weight is 205, then stay at 205 and just make do with what you have. But I like Josh Evans a lot. I think he's the guy that's going to give you some depth. And if your other safeties aren't careful, he'll sneak into the starting lineup. He was a free safety. I look at Cyprien as more of a strong safety, but guess what? In this day and age in the National Football League, you got to be able to play both free and strong safety. There really isn't a designation at the safety position because you got to be able to come down into the box and hit, and you got to be able to play back deep. So I feel like you have to be interchangeable in this day and age in the National Football League. Back in the day, guys were designated as a strong safety, and you just needed to hit. You didn't have to worry about covering anything. A guy like Steve Atwater, back in the day for the Denver Broncos, he was a machine, and all he had his eyes trained to do was hit. I remember the huge shoulder pads and the big neck roll, and he looked like he had on 5 pair of shoulder pads. That's all he wanted to do was hit. In this day and age, you got to be able to hit, and you got to be able to play in space. And I think Josh Evans can do a little bit of both. And so I like this selection by the Jacksonville Jaguars. You look in the backyard at the Florida Gators, and you see a guy that's talented at the safety position. You pick him up. I think it's a double in the 6th round at 169, safety out of Florida, Josh Evans. I think it's a solid pick, a guy that down the road might be able to start for you and he's going to give you some added value in the special teams game as well, as he's going to be a guy that's probably going to be on every single one of your special teams units. So I think it's a solid pick, Josh Evans, in the 6th round. So you look at your 2 7th rounders, and the Jaguars decide to load up on the cornerback position. Okay. So we go to the first one at 208, cornerback out of New Mexico State, Jeremy Harris. And one thing about your head coach, Gus Bradley, is, and look, if you don't know, now you know, he likes long corners, okay? Long corners who can run fast. So I look at Jeremy Harris and I say, okay, we know what Gus Bradley likes. I just told you what he likes. He likes long corners. And so this guy plays at New Mexico State, so I'm thinking, okay, that's a solid school in a pretty solid conference. So, okay, that's a check. Then you look at the size, 6'2". You know Gus Bradley likes his corners long and athletic. Okay, so 6'2", check. Then you look at the speed, athletic, 4'4". Oh, okay, 4'4", 40. Check. So what is this dude doing in the 7th round then? 6'2", 4'4", 40, went to New Mexico State? Uh-oh, SpaghettiOs. You knew something had to be wrong here. There had to be some kind of underlying deficiency that would make this guy a 7th round selection. And this guy is 186 pounds. And this guy only benched 2 1/4 5 times. So, translation, he's not jamming anybody. He's not getting physical with anybody. He's not going to be bringing down many physical receivers or ball carriers. He's one of those guys that, look, I'm going to put my head down and I'm just going in and I'm olaying. I hope I grab something. If I don't, shoot me. And those are the type of guys that worry me, because I don't want these guys on the edges for any reason. Because if something gets out wide, if that running back bounces it out wide, and you're the last line of defense, stopping this from being a 30-yard gain. Look, you're out there and this could be a 4-yard pickup if you just make the tackle. But instead, because you're 186 pounds and you only repped 2 1/4 5 times, and you're really, really feeble and fragile, you're looking to just go down and cut this guy. And you duck your head, you don't see what you're hitting, and you just go swinging for the fences, and you just hope you grab something. And you miss, guess what? I got a big play on my hands now. Same thing with a receiver catching a simple, because you can't jam at 186 and 5 reps at 2 1/4. You can't jam anybody in the National Football League. And so you got to play off coverage. You playing off coverage, guess what? I'm throwing a hitch, and that hitch is to a 6'3" Hakeem Nicks, who catches it. You go ducking down and swiping at his legs. He makes you miss, and all of a sudden, I got a 47-yard gain on my hands. Can't have it. So, translation, this is a single for me in the 7th round. Even though this guy is long and has some upside, can't do it. 186, 5 reps of 2 1/4, can't do it. Won't do it. Can't win with them. Won't win with them. So, it's a single for me. Cornerback out of New Mexico State, Jeremy Harris in the 7th round. 2 selections later, at 210, you go back to the cornerback market. This time at Appalachian State, this pick is from the Philadelphia Eagles. You select Demetrius McCray. And much like Jeremy Harris, we know what Gus Bradley likes. Long corners. Normally, they're physical too. But in the case of Harris, that's not going down. In the case of Demetrius McCray, 6'1", long corner. Again, 4'4", 40. Very athletic. But 4 reps at 2 1/4. 190 pounds. So, essentially, he did it again, drafting 2 duplicates. 2 guys that are extremely long, extremely athletic, but extremely weak. Not strong guys. Look, the only thing that I can say in their defense is they can put on weight. They can put on more muscle in the National Football League. They can get with the weight and conditioning coach and put on some muscle mass. And so these guys can get up to 200 pounds if they get with the right people with the Jacksonville Jaguars. And I'm pretty sure the Jaguars are going to Make them get in the weight room. Make them put on some more muscle. But how will they carry that muscle? How will they carry 200 pounds? Everyone can't be 200 pounds. All of a sudden, that 4.440 that he was sporting at 186, or that 4.440 that he was sporting at 190, turns into a 4.55 because they're not used to carrying those extra 15 pounds. So you got to be careful with these guys. And much like Harris, McCray, he's not jamming anybody. Now, he's a lot more physical than Harris is. He's a lot more willing to come up and get in your face and try to do something to you. But just because you're willing and able doesn't mean it's going down. Just because Demetrius McCray isn't afraid at 6'1", 190 doesn't mean that at 220 pounds, Andre Johnson isn't about to stiff arm him into the ground and keep on running as if he's a little fly. So just because he isn't afraid doesn't mean he's going to make things happen. So again, much like Harris, it's another single for me because can't win with him, won't win with him at 190 pounds, only benching 2 1/4, 4 times. I can't do it. I just can't. And so the Jaguars wrap up the draft with 2 singles in the form of 2 cornerbacks who, frankly, just aren't strong enough to get it done in the National Football League. And so you look at this draft as a whole, and let's clean up the needs board quickly. Jags draft 2 corners to finish up the draft at the back half of this draft, and so 2 more slashes go through the cornerback position. A little bit disappointed that nothing was achieved here at the defensive line. You need to get pressure on the quarterback. I don't think you addressed that here in the draft, and so a little disappointed from that standpoint. But hey, look, Gus Bradley has a idea of what he wants to get accomplished, and his main objective in this draft: become more physical. You do that by selecting Joeckel. You do that by selecting Cyprien. You do that by selecting Dwayne Gratz. Also, Josh Evans. So that was priority number 1, more physicality for this football team. We're going to be a different team. We're going to be tougher, mentally and physically. He also wanted to get faster. Speed! You can't teach it. So he wanted to upgrade the athleticism on his team. He did that with Ace Sanders and Denard Robinson. And so, look, he had a direction and an identity in this draft, and I felt like he carried it out very well in this draft, and I feel like it's a solid double when you look at what the Jags were able to accomplish. Joeckel, a home run, Cyprien, a triple, Gratz, a triple, Sanders, a double, Denard Robinson, a triple, Evans, a double, and the last 2 corners, both singles. Without those corners, maybe this is a triple, but hey, look, you think these guys might be able to do something for you. Maybe they're developmental projects that you draft and stash on your roster. See if you can get them up to speed and up to par with their weight. And maybe they can help you down the road. But I like what you did at the top half of this draft, especially the first 5 picks. I mean, Robinson, Sanders, Gratz, Cyprien, and Joeckel, to me, all locks to not only make this roster, but to be huge contributors in 2013. And so I really like what the Jaguars did at the top of this draft. I'll throw this one caveat in here, and then we'll get out of here. Look, for Ace Sanders and Denard Robinson to be what they're supposed to be, for them to flourish on this football team, and not just in the special teams game or as gadget players. I'm talking about as receivers as well. You need JB to get his act together. You need Justin Blackmon to be Justin Blackmon on the football field. He needs help off of it. You need him to get his mind right, focus in on football, because he had a really solid rookie season. I mean, over 60 grabs, over 800 yards. That's a really good season for a rookie in this league. And so for these guys to fit into their proper slots, because they're not guys that you want out wide, for them to fit where they're supposed to be, you need JB on one side and you need Cecil Shorts the third on the other. Then you allow guys like Ace Sanders and Denard Robinson to work the slots and get mismatches in the middle of the football field. Then you get them out in space. So you need JB to show up, and you need him to come correct. And so if you're the Jacksonville Jaguars, he has to work out for you. And we know he has all the physical gifts necessary to work out on the field. It's off it where Justin Blackmon needs to straighten up and fly right. So Love the draft. It's a double for the Jacksonville Jaguars. That's going to do it for the Jaguars here in the 2013 NFL Draft Wrap-Up.
Draft Zone.